My dream car was my pride, until 1 month later it nearly killed me. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and poverty wasn't just a word, it was the background noise of our lives. My family lived in a cramped, crumbling apartment that barely kept the cold out during winter nights. My parents worked tirelessly, but no matter how hard they tried, money was always tight. I watched my mom patch up old clothes with frayed threads, and my dad come home with aching hands from factory shifts that paid barely enough for dinner. But even in that struggle, I held on to a dream. I dreamed of a life where I wouldn't have to worry about rent or whether my parents could afford medicine. I promised myself that one day I'd be the one changing the story, not just for me, but for my entire family. It wasn't easy. School wasn't a walk in the park. I worked part-time job from the age of 15, delivering newspapers, washing dishes, and whatever else I could find, just to help keep us afloat. The nights were long, and the days even longer, but I had an idea that kept me going. Success wasn't just about luck. It was about grinding every single day, doing what others wouldn't, learning, and taking every opportunity that came my way. At 18, I stumbled upon drop shipping, a business model where I could sell products online without keeping inventory. It sounded almost too good to be true, but I dove in head first. I spent every spare hour watching tutorials, reading forums, testing products, and building my online store. The beginning was brutal. Many products didn't sell, shipping delays tested my patience, and customer complaints kept piling up. But I learned fast how to pick winning products, how to market them right, how to manage customer expectations. Slowly but surely, orders started coming in, and my small online store began to grow. Within 2 years, that hustle transformed into a thriving dropshipping business. I was no longer just scraping by. I was making real money, enough to support my family and start dreaming bigger. When I turned 20, everything changed. I bought my first car, a modest one, but to me, it was a symbol of how far I'd come. And then, one by one, bigger things started falling into place. A cozy apartment in the city, a sleek new sports car, and finally a large house for my family, something sturdy and warm where my parents could finally feel safe and proud. Life felt like a dream. I was the kid who made it out, the millionaire who never forgot his roots. I spent time with my family, traveled a little, and kept growing my business. The success felt sweet, but it never blinded me. I appreciated everything, from the big wins to the smallest moments with my parents. Then, just when I thought life was perfect, it all came crashing down. When I left work one evening, I felt an unusual calm. The sky was a deep shade of twilight blue, the kind that makes everything look peaceful. I was driving my dream car, a shiny, jet-black coupe that gleamed under the streetlights. Heading home on the main road I'd traveled so many times before. I stopped at a red light, glancing at my phone to check a message from my mom. The light turned green, and I eased forward, the engine humming smoothly. But from around the corner, out of nowhere, came a car, speeding far too fast, swerving uncontrollably. It slammed into me with a force so violent it threw me forward, shattering glass and metal everywhere. My dream car was instantly reduced to a mangled wreck. I heard the crash, the screech of tires, the shouts of people, and then darkness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Machines beeped softly around me, and a sterile smell filled the room. My body ached all over, and my head was pounding. Doctors told me I was lucky to be alive, but I had no idea how bad it really was. As days turned into weeks, the nightmare grew worse. Police came asking questions, trying to piece together what happened. But then the shock hit me like a second blow. I was facing a trial. They said I was at fault, that I'd run the red light or caused the accident somehow. 5 years in prison loomed over me. It didn't make sense. I knew I was innocent. The other car was full of drunk men, reckless, dangerous. But here was the catch. Those men were close acquaintances of the city mayor, a powerful man with deep ties and influence. Suddenly, the law felt twisted, and justice felt like a joke. They wanted to throw me behind bars to protect those drunk drivers. Days in the hospital blurred into each other. I was trapped in a haze of pain and disbelief. The bruises on my body told the story of the crash. Ribs cracked, a fractured arm, and a concussion that clouded my mind. But what hurt worse than any physical injury was the sinking feeling that the system I believed in was ready to betray me. Lawyers came and went, documents piled up on the bedside table, and the whispers started. People saying I was reckless, that I'd caused the accident. Even some friends I trusted began to distance themselves, afraid to get caught in a scandal. I was alone in the middle of a storm I didn't cause, and I had no idea if I'd survive it. The mayor's men were powerful. Rumors said the drunk drivers were off limits because of their connections. The police investigation was suspiciously one-sided. Witnesses who could clear me were ignored or intimidated. Every step felt like a fight uphill against an invisible force that wanted me silenced. One afternoon, my lawyer, an older woman with sharp eyes and a steady voice, visited me. They want you to plead guilty. 5 years. It's a deal to make this all disappear quietly, she said, her voice low. But I know you're not guilty. We can fight. It won't be easy. I looked at her, exhausted but determined. I won't give in. I didn't do anything wrong. They can't just throw me away. That was the moment I realized this was bigger than just a car accident. This was about justice, about truth, about standing up to a system built to protect the powerful while crushing those beneath. The trial date was set, and the days before it were the darkest of my life. I could barely move without pain, but I spent hours every day studying the case, memorizing every detail. I begged for witnesses to come forward to tell the truth. Slowly, a few brave ones stepped up: a taxi driver who saw the other car speeding, a passerby who smelled alcohol on the drivers. The courtroom was cold and intimidating. The mayor's presence was felt even in his absence. His influence hung over the room like a shadow. The prosecutors painted me as reckless, as the cause of the crash. They waived the driver's records, barely mentioning their intoxication or reckless behavior. But my lawyer fought back fiercely. She presented evidence: phone records, traffic camera footage, eyewitness accounts. The truth was undeniable. The other car was speeding, the drivers intoxicated, and I was fully stopped at the red light before the collision. The tension was unbearable. The mayor's allies tried every trick: delaying tactics, false witnesses, pressure on jurors. But the truth shone through. After what felt like an eternity, the verdict came: not guilty. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The men who caused the crash were arrested on the spot, their connections no longer enough to shield them. Justice, finally, had prevailed. I walked out of the courthouse a free man, but the battle was far from over. The accident had left scars deeper than the physical ones. The recovery was slow and painful. Months of therapy, sleepless nights, and a haunting fear that life could change in a single moment. Yet, even through the pain, I found strength. The darkest nights made the brightest days feel more vivid. When I finally returned home, my family was waiting. My mom's tears of relief, my dad's proud smile, they reminded me why I fought so hard. Not for glory or money, but for them. The accident had almost taken everything: my health, my freedom, my future. But it hadn't broken me. The months after the trial were some of the hardest I'd ever faced, but they also became a turning point in my life. Physically, I was battered. My body protested every movement, and the doctors warned it might take a year or more before I was back to full strength. Mentally, the trauma lingered like a shadow that refused to leave. But I refused to let it define me. While I was still in recovery, I spent endless hours learning, planning, and strategizing. My dropshipping business, which I'd put on hold during the chaos, was waiting for me to return. The thought of rebuilding wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming control over my life. With the support of my family and my loyal team, I threw myself back into the grind. I restructured my store, broadened my product range, improved customer service, and invested in smarter advertising. I learned from my past mistakes and embraced innovation. Slowly but surely, the numbers climbed. Sales soared higher than before. My brand gained recognition, and clients trusted us more. The lessons from pain and betrayal had sharpened my instincts. I was no longer just a survivor. I was a fighter and a strategist. And life started to feel like mine again. One sunny afternoon, standing in my new office overlooking the city, I received a call from an old friend. He congratulated me on the recovery and the business growth, but then said something that caught me off guard. The mayor is out. They're investigating his involvement in the accident cover-up. It's all unraveling. For years, that man had been untouchable, a giant behind the scenes. But now, justice was reaching even higher. I felt a strange mix of emotions, vindication, relief, and a small spark of revenge. Not the cruel kind, but the satisfaction that truth and fairness had finally won over corruption and power. I bought a new car, even better than the last, a sleek, powerful machine that roared like a beast and gleamed under the sun. It wasn't just a purchase, it was a symbol that no matter how hard life hits you, you can come back stronger. I celebrated by taking my parents on a trip, the kind of vacation we never dreamed of when I was a kid. The look on their faces when they saw the ocean for the first time was priceless. Every smile, every hug was a reminder of why I fought so hard. I even expanded my business, launching new stores and venturing into other markets. The past had taught me resilience, and I was determined to live fully, not just survive. But the biggest lesson I learned wasn't about money or success. It was about appreciation. Life is fragile. One moment, you have everything. The next, it can be gone. I learned to savor the little things, the sound of my mother's laughter, the warmth of the sun on my face, the feeling of freedom when I drive down an open road. No matter how dark the night, there is always dawn. And for anyone listening to this story, I want you to remember this. No matter how hard life hits, no matter how unfair the world seems, you can survive. You can fight. You can come back. But you must never give up, because the best chapters are always yet to come. Despite the triumphs, the road to recovery and success was far from smooth. The physical pain slowly receded, but the emotional wounds were deeper than I expected. Nightmares from the crash haunted my sleep. Flashes of metal twisting, the sound of shattering glass, and the sickening crunch of bodies colliding. I often woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum. There were days when even getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. My friends who had once cheered me on seemed distant now. Some had moved on, others couldn't relate to what I'd endured. It was isolating. At times, I questioned if I was truly the same person who had built everything from nothing. But I refused to let those shadows consume me. Instead, I sought therapy, opened up about my fears, and slowly rebuilt my mental strength. I realized that healing isn't just about the body. It's about the mind and soul, too. My family was my anchor. My mom's gentle words and my dad's quiet strength gave me hope on the darkest days. They had sacrificed everything for me to have a better life, and I owed it to them to keep fighting, to keep moving forward. Meanwhile, the fallout from the trial sent shockwaves through the city. The mayor's reputation shattered like glass. Investigations revealed a web of corruption that extended far beyond my accident. Bribery, intimidation, and cover-ups that had corrupted the very institutions meant to protect the people. The drunk drivers were sentenced to prison. The mayor himself faced charges and was eventually removed from office. For the first time in a long while, I felt the scales of justice balancing. Yet, I never sought revenge. I wasn't interested in seeing others fall. My battle was about proving my innocence, reclaiming my life, and protecting my family's future. The law had failed me at first, but in the end, truth won. Business thrived in the years that followed. I expanded beyond drop shipping into wholesale and even launched a small line of products designed by my team. I hired people who believed in the dream, people who needed a second chance, just like I had once. With success came the freedom to live life on my terms. I traveled, explored new cultures, and invested in causes that mattered. I gave back to my community, helping young entrepreneurs who, like me, came from humble beginnings. I even found love, a partner who saw past the scars and understood the battle behind the smile. Together, we built a life filled with laughter, trust, and endless support. But through it all, I never forgot the lesson learned in that hospital bed. Life is unpredictable, and everything can change in an instant. One moment, you're on top of the world. The next, everything you love can shatter. So, every day, I live with gratitude. For my health, for my family, for the chance to write my own story. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. No matter how dark your path, no matter how impossible it seems, you can rise. You can fight. You can win. But only if you hold on and believe that your best days are still ahead. Even as life began to settle into a new normal, the scars from that night remained, sometimes hidden beneath the surface, other times glaringly obvious. There's a part of me that wrestled with the idea of fate. Why me? Why did I survive while others didn't? Why was my dream car, the symbol of my hard work, destroyed in a second? The accident had taught me humility. No matter how high you rise, you're always vulnerable. No amount of money or success can shield you from the randomness of life. One afternoon, while I was meeting with some business partners, my phone buzzed with a message that sent chills down my spine. It was from a private number. The message read, "You think it's over? Watch your back." For a moment, panic gripped me. Had the mayor's allies decided to retaliate? Was this a threat meant to scare me into silence? I didn't respond. Instead, I showed the message to my closest friends and security team. We beefed up my personal security and took precautions. But no attack came. I realized it was more than just a warning. It was a reminder that success, especially when built from the ground up, always has enemies. People who resent, envy, or fear what you've achieved. But rather than back down, I let that threat fuel me. I doubled down on my work, expanding my business overseas, diversifying investments, and building a brand that could withstand any storm. I hired a private investigator to dig into the origins of the threat. After months of work, we discovered it was a desperate scare tactic from a small faction still loyal to the old mayor. A last gasp to intimidate and destabilize. When confronted, they backed off, realizing I wasn't someone to be trifled with. That moment taught me the power of standing your ground. When you fight with integrity and strength, the darkness can be pushed back. One of the most rewarding moments came when I invited my parents to tour the new company headquarters. They walked through the sleek offices with wide eyes, amazed at how far we'd come. My dad clapped me on the back, his voice thick with pride. "You did it, son. You made us proud." My mom smiled, tears in her eyes. "We always knew you would." In that moment, all the pain, struggle, and setbacks felt worth it. I realized that success isn't just about money or status. It's about lifting others up, honoring your roots, and never forgetting where you came from. And through all of this, I kept the memory of that night alive, not as a source of fear or bitterness, but as a reminder that life's fragility is also its greatest gift. Because when you lose everything, you learn what truly matters. As the years passed, I often reflected on how a single moment had the power to change everything. 1 second on that dark road had nearly ended my story before it truly began. But it hadn't. Instead, it rewrote the chapters, making me stronger, wiser, and more grateful than ever. I began sharing my story publicly, through interviews, talks, and online videos, hoping to inspire others trapped in struggles that felt insurmountable. I spoke honestly about failure, pain, and fighting back against injustice. People reached out, telling me my story gave them hope. One message stood out. It was from a young man living in a neighborhood much like the one I grew up in. He said, "I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out. Your story shows me there's a way." That was when I decided to create a foundation dedicated to helping young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, providing them mentorship, resources, and opportunities to succeed. Because success, I realized, wasn't just about me. It was about lifting others up. But even as my life flourished, I never forgot the fragility beneath it all. The accident had taught me to treasure every moment, to live fully, love deeply, and never take a single day for granted. I took time off sometimes simply to be with my family, to watch sunsets, to laugh until my sides hurt. Those moments, simple and pure, were the true riches. I bought a new car, better than the one I lost, but this time it wasn't a trophy. It was a tool, a means to explore, to connect, and to remind myself of the journey. Sometimes I catch myself staring at it, remembering the crash and the chaos. And then I smile because I survived. I thrived. Through it all, I learned one final lesson. No matter how much you plan, no matter how hard you work, life will throw punches. Sometimes they'll knock you down, but the fight isn't over until you choose to give up. And as long as you keep standing, keep fighting, and keep believing, you're already winning. One afternoon, a year after my full recovery, I found myself driving along the coast with the windows down, the salty breeze brushing my face. The city skyline behind me looked peaceful, but I couldn't help reflecting on how much had changed and how much hadn't. Success had brought comforts, but it had also brought challenges. I learned that trust was a rare currency. Some people wanted to be part of my life only for what I could give them. Others feared my rise and sought to pull me back down. Navigating friendships and business partnerships became a delicate dance. Still, my core remained intact. The values instilled in me during those hard early years, perseverance, humility, and loyalty, guided every decision. That day, I thought about the future, not just mine, but the legacy I wanted to leave. I knew I wanted to build something bigger than a business, something that could endure beyond me and inspire generations. A few months later, I launched an initiative to support families affected by accidents like mine. We partnered with hospitals, legal aid organizations, and counseling services. The goal was to provide immediate help to victims, fighting for justice when the system failed them. It wasn't just charity, it was personal. I understood the pain, the fear, and the frustration all too well. The gratitude we received humbled me. People shared their stories, many echoing the themes of injustice and resilience. It reminded me why I'd chosen this path, to be more than just a successful entrepreneur, but a force for good. But the journey wasn't without setbacks. Business challenges surfaced, market shifts tested strategies, and sometimes personal doubts crept in. The crash and trial had left a subtle scar, a fear of losing control. I learned to accept that uncertainty was part of life. Instead of fearing it, I embraced it, adapting and evolving with every twist. One night, sitting alone in my office, I wrote in my journal, "Life's fragility is its beauty. The only certainty is change. But through it all, I will keep moving forward, because giving up is never an option." A few years into rebuilding, a surprising opportunity came knocking. A well-known investor reached out after hearing my story and seeing my business growth. He proposed a partnership, a chance to scale the dropshipping empire globally and diversify into other industries. It was a crossroads: accept the offer and risk losing some control, or continue growing steadily on my own. I weighed the risks carefully, but the vision of expanding my impact, creating more jobs, helping more people, was too big to ignore. We shook hands, and together we launched new ventures: tech startups, sustainable product lines, and community programs. The business blossomed beyond what I'd imagined. Despite the whirlwind, I always made time for what mattered most: my family. My parents lived comfortably in the big house I bought for them, filled with warmth and laughter. I remember a quiet evening when my dad and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. He turned to me and said, "Son, you've done what many only dream of, but never forget where you came from." I nodded. Those words anchored me. Not long ago, I visited the very intersection where the accident happened. The street was unchanged, just another busy road filled with cars rushing by. But to me, it was a reminder of the fragility of life and the power of resilience. Standing there, I whispered a silent promise: to live fully, to fight fairly, and to never take a single moment for granted. Because no matter how hard life hits, it's the comeback that defines us. The years that followed brought even more unexpected blessings. I met people who believed in me not just for my success, but for my character: mentors, partners, friends who became like family. Together, we built not just businesses, but communities, places where dreams could grow regardless of background or circumstance. One of the proudest moments was when I hosted a conference for young entrepreneurs from struggling neighborhoods. Hearing their stories reminded me of my own journey. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the fear. I saw in their eyes the same fire I once had. At that event, I shared what I'd learned. That success is a marathon, not a sprint. That setbacks are inevitable, but not the end. That integrity and perseverance are the true currency of life. The applause that followed wasn't just for me. It was for every person willing to fight, to believe, and to rise. But life, as always, kept testing me. A close business partner betrayed my trust, secretly siphoning funds and undermining our projects. The discovery hit hard, a painful reminder that not everyone in your circle has your best interests at heart. I faced a choice: retaliate or rise above. Choosing the latter, I took legal action, exposed the fraud, and rebuilt trust with my team. The experience was a bitter pill, but it strengthened my resolve. I realized that the battles I fought outside were nothing compared to the ones within. Through triumph and betrayal, pain and joy, I learned the ultimate truth. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair. But your spirit, your courage to stand, to fight, and to forgive is what shapes your destiny. And in the end, that's the story worth telling. Now, as I look back on everything, the long nights of struggle, the crash that nearly ended it all, the courtroom battles, the bitter betrayals, and the victories both big and small, I see a tapestry woven from pain, courage, and hope. I'm not the same kid who grew up in that cramped apartment. I'm stronger, wiser, and more grateful. But the fire that drove me hasn't dimmed. It burns brighter, fueled by the knowledge that life's greatest gifts often come wrapped in hardship. My dream car? I bought an even better one after I recovered, but it's never just about the car. It's about what it represents: perseverance, faith, and the refusal to be defeated. My family? They live comfortably now, surrounded by love and security. And I carry their sacrifices with me every day, a reminder of why I fight. The accident could have broken me. It almost did, but didn't. Instead, it made me realize that no matter how hard the fall, the human spirit can rise, stronger and more determined than ever before. If there's one message I want you to take from my story, it's this: no matter how dark the night, dawn will come. No matter how heavy the burden, strength can be found. And no matter how broken you feel, you can heal. Life is fragile, but that fragility is what makes it precious. So hold on, fight hard, and never stop believing. Because the best chapters are still ahead, and your story is far from over. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most incredible victories.